Welcome to science class. Today you're going to be doing guided notes for 2.2. If you haven't gotten your copy of the guided notes yet, be sure to grab them off the bean table. This week we're still sticking with kind of a similar topic that we did last week. And so this week we're looking at how does human activity affect ecosystems. Last week we did how does what we buy affect ecosystems. So this is pretty similar. For vocab, a really important word this week is called biodiversity. And that just means that you've got a large variety of life in the world or in a particular habitat or ecosystem. A good way to think of how human activity affects ecosystems is to use the acronym HIPPO. So H stands for habitat destruction or fragmentation. I stands for invasive species. P stands for population growth. That means human population growth. The other P stands for pollution, and then O stands for overconsumption. So for habitat destruction, that basically means that an animal's home or habitat is destroyed. And that often means the destruction of the animal, unfortunately. So if you think about your neighborhood, before it was a neighborhood, it probably was a forest. Could have been plains or grasslands. But for our area, most likely it would have been some kind of a forest. Another good example for around here is a farm. So if you have a big farm full of corn or soybeans, that's a man-made thing. And so before it was a corn field or soybean field, it also probably would have been a forest. And any of the animals that would have lived in that area have to go somewhere else or they die off. For the I in hippo, we have invasive species, and that means that it's any organism that's been relocated somewhere other than its original habitat. And that's usually going to be from humans. Usually, the invasive species is going to be really good at outcompeting local species, and it's going to throw the food chain out of whack. And some animals or organisms end up being endangered just because of this, just because of the introduction of a new species. For Louisville, two really common ones are bush honeysuckle and winter creeper. And there's tons of both of these out in the woods behind the school. So the bush honeysuckle is kind of just a big shrub, almost like a tree looking thing. And this time of the year, it's got red berries on it. The other one that you probably would see a lot back in the woods and just really in any woods in Kentucky is the one on the right, which is called winter creeper. And that one will go all the way up to the top of the tree, and then it'll strangle and block out any sunlight, which will eventually kill the tree. So that's kind of what the woods behind the school look like. So it's just kind of all covered. It looks green, so you might think that it's healthy, but it's green because it's got this invasive plant that's not local to Kentucky. A couple of other invasive species to our area. You've got wild boar, armadillos, stink bugs, and Japanese beetles. So those are all native to some other place, and then they've made their way into Kentucky. The first P in hippo stands for population growth of humans. And so our numbers are just increasing every single day. So there's always more people in the world. And so if there's more people, then that means there's more mouths to feed, more shelter needed, more fuel, whether that's for a car or for stoves and things like that, and then more water. And so if we need more food, shelter, fuel, and water, then somewhere in the world we're chopping habitat down to get more of those things, or we're creating more pollution as well. The other P stands for pollution. And so any kind of pollution is bad. And so if you have water pollution or air pollution in an area, it's going to affect the animals who live there. One byproduct of that could be climate change. So if it's warmer in an area, or if the climate or weather patterns change, that's going to affect the animals that live there. And then lastly, you've got acid rain or air pollution. And since it is wind, those things can go pretty much anywhere. So even if the US does really well with their air pollution, if Canada doesn't, then Canada's pollution can kind of just go through the air and end up across our border. And then the O in HIPPO stands for overconsumption. So this really just means that we're consuming or buying more things than we need to survive. And there's a little fact at the bottom. So we only make up 5% of the world's population, but we create 33% of the world's pollution. And so overconsumption, you may have thought meant eating a whole bunch or maybe eating more than you need to. But typically it just means buying more things than we need. So for a lot of people, it's pretty common to have too many shirts or maybe too many pairs of pants or maybe too many pairs of shoes than you actually need. Same thing with electronics. If you have a TV in every room, that's probably a little bit over the number than you would need. And sticking with the theme of TVs and electronics, a lot of them contain things that are really toxic to us, like heavy metals and toxic chemicals. And then once we use something like maybe it's an iPhone or like an iPad, it goes to a landfill, and those chemicals inside the electronic end up in the local water system. And those have some pretty nasty effects. So they affect our central nervous system, our reproductive and endocrine system, and our immune system too. So basically, any part of your human body can be affected by that. And then just something to think about when you say you throw something away, just trying to consider where away is. It doesn't just disappear forever. Okay, and that's the end of the guided notes. And so just as a reminder, if you're finished filling it all out, you'll want to clip it into a binder or notebook, and I'll check that off at a later date, probably the week after next. And then after you've clipped in your guided notes and saved them, then you'll want to go ahead and watch all the videos that are on week 9's work plan, taking notes as you go. And then after that, you can start on your Door 1, Door 2 project, and that should be posted already. And then just as a quick reminder, just remember that all the videos and everything that gets attached to the work plan is how I get to see what you've learned for the week. And there's a pretty good connection between people who watch all the videos and then have higher scores versus if you maybe only watch one or none of the videos and then you're great on your project. And it's pretty easy to tell if you've watched the videos or not by looking at your finished product. If you have any questions, just let me know and I'm glad to help. Thanks.